to call the meeting to order, and in your virtual places where you are, if you would give me 1 second.
Andy, I think you need to close executive session first.
Thank you, Mr. Hoyt. Can I get a motion? Well,
we already did the pledge too.
sorry, what was that?
We opened the meeting already.
I hadn't finished the sentence. Well, can I get a motion to close executive session?
I'll make the motion, McCarthy.
McCarthy,
Second it. Lawyer.
second by Loye. Any discussion? All those in favor? Actually, I have to go through. Sorry, Mrs. Fishman. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Wood. Is Mrs. Wood here?
I don't see her.
Was
No.
Mrs. Wood in executive session?
He was.
He was.
All right, so Pearl, I don't know if you're able to reach out to Mrs. Wood, but check in with her, see if we can get her over here. Mrs.
I just
Nickerson?
emailed her.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yes.
Mrs. Sunday?
Yes.
Mr. Loye?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yeah.
Mr. Hoyt?
Yep.
And Mr. Martin is a yes. So executive session is closed. I hereby make the motion that we move into our open session. I don't need a vote on that one because I'm starting the meeting. Mr. Loye is holding our flag, so if you guys would virtually stand where you are and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hoorah.
Mr. Martin, can we change the phone numbers to names so we know who's joining us?
Oh. Let's see, who is 420-9200? Thank you. And who is 9119?
Stacy Miller.
Hello, thank you. Sorry, we're just doing this so that we can kind of control the meeting. Whose phone number ends in 3013?
That's me, Andy.
That's Pearl.
Pearl.
Pearl, thank you, Pearl. And let's see, I think, did we determine that the one that just says iPhone is Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Yes.
We'll go with that. And I think oh, no.
8567.
And I'm sorry, what was that, Connie?
There was an 8567, but I don't know where that went.
Yeah, I
That's
don't
me.
see.
Oh, Chance. Gotcha.
Gotcha.
That's where it went.
All right, so a couple just housekeeping things. Number one, I know of those that are in attendance that Mr. Creamer, when the time comes, is looking to speak to the board as far as a virtual blue card, so I have that down. Is there anyone else that would like to have the opportunity to speak to the board? Just let me know now, and then we'll plan it. No? All right. So give me just a second so I can get you guys over to the agenda. Give me just 1 second. Are you guys seeing the agenda now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, excellent. All right, because of this whole virtual world, we've already conducted a executive session. It has to be a separate link. Obviously, we couldn't take the risk of those that aren't part of executive session hearing what was discussed. So it's a little bit of an odd setup. But we do open this up to the community forum now. And so we have one blue card, Mr. Rich Creamer with the CSTA. Rich, can we hear you?
Well, I can hear you. Can you all hear me?
We can, yes.
Yeah.
Floor is yours.
Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Superintendent Colabufo, Central Square board members, and fellow community members. Tonight, I'm addressing you as both a taxpayer and a teacher in our school district. There is no doubt the COVID pandemic has made life more difficult for most, if not all of us. These difficulties take on many faces and can be seen and felt throughout our nation, our state, and certainly right here in Central Square. When the very health and safety of our own families is challenged, it is a welcome opportunity to have some control over our lives. And one of these opportunities arrives each year around this time. It's a time when our community can let each other know how much they value children and education in Central Square. It is a time when no matter what is happening in the world or in their own families, each taxpayer in our district can say, I believe and I support our children, for they are our future. Our community has always had a choice, and for almost 20 years now, and regardless of economic distress, they have made it very clear they support having that choice and our children by going to the polls and voting to pass our budget every year. They have approved whatever budget has been needed to keep class sizes small because they know children learn best in those situations. They have recognized and approved the budget to maintain our academic, sports, music, and arts programs. They have recognized that they should have a choice, and they have passed the budget every single time. I'm here tonight to ask our board to continue to support the leadership and foresight of our superintendent, Tom Colabufa, and to urge the Board of Education to support the budget as the superintendent proposes it, and to let our community decide how much it still values the education of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Creamer. Appreciate the comments. And there
Thank you.
being no other blue cards, we'll move into our agenda and go forward. And again, this is a little bit tedious, I know, for everyone, but because of being able to track these things, and particularly for our board clerk, Pearl Horn, each vote is a roll call vote, and we'll do it in the same order each time. So with that, I'll make a motion to accept item D in its entirety. Can I have a second?
McCarthy, second.
Second by Mr. McCarthy. Any discussion on item D? All right, being none, I'll call for the vote. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mrs. Wood? Is Mrs. Wood here yet? All right, Mrs. Nickerson?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what D even was. Yeah.
Personnel, instructional, and non-instructional. But just confirming, that's a yes, Mrs. Sundit, or?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Loyer,
Yes.
Mr. Patch,
Yes.
Mr. Hoyt,
Yes.
and Mr. Martin is a yes. All right, I'll make a motion for item E in its entirety, the consent agenda. There are 7 subheadings. Can I get a second?
McCarthy, second.
Second by Mr. Loyer on that one. Any discussion on item E? All right, call for the vote. Mrs. Fishman,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Wood, if she's there, which I don't think she is. Mrs. Nicholson?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit?
Yes.
Mr. Loyer?
Yes.
Mr. Patch? Did I hear Mr. Patch?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Hoyt?
Yep.
And Mr. Martin is a yes. Item E passes. Move on to special presentations to the board. We aren't necessarily each time these are on here presenting them. So as an example, item F1 is Spotlight on Millard Hawk. Tom sent that out to all of us ahead of time. It's available in the agenda for community and anyone other than the board attending this meeting right now, but we won't take the time to go through it. And Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but Amanda's not planning to present anything tonight, correct?
No, no.
Okay. So that's there for information purposes only, but we will then turn it over to Mr. Colabufo for continuity of education plan.
So for the continuity of education plan, I'll be pretty brief. I just want to tell you the process. So we closed schools because the governor said to close schools. It was mid-March. When we did so, all the superintendents across the state had to have a continuity of education plan. We did that. They were approved. Some superintendents across the state didn't have them approved right away, but then everybody got them approved. Then about 2 weeks ago, roughly about a week and a half ago, we got word from state ed. They opened them back up and they needed to find actual evidence. It was much more drilled down. So we worked with cabinet, we worked with the principals. We had to make sure that whatever we put, that's what we were doing. And it was focused on specific details. What are we doing for our special education population, our English language learners? What are we doing for our homeless students? And it really listed the criteria. So the majority of superintendents had them rejected when we put our first ones, our next ones back in. Then everybody had specific things they had to focus on. And then I did all of that. And right now it just says submitted. So that's basically every superintendent that I have spoken with. It just says submitted. It hasn't said accepted yet. I'm not going to get into great detail right now. It is posted on our website. It is 8 pages long. I think it is right there. It's a great example of a collective effort among the teachers, support staff, the administration, to make sure that we were doing everything we could in our power to make sure that students are engaged as much as possible, especially with the constraints in society, and that they are participating. I can't speak enough for the teachers and the administrators. Administrators making a lot of phone calls to see why students aren't connecting. We don't have a lot of students that aren't connecting, but we're even doing wellness checks. So we have 117 wellness checks set for the next 2 weeks, where our special patrol officers will be going to do specific wellness checks. But overall, I got to tell you right now, this has been a Herculean effort on part of administration, but mostly on part of the teachers. And what they are doing to connect with students, they're so proud of their work. They're forwarding us examples. Every one of our principals has to go in to the virtual learning. And if it's not virtual learning, they go in and look at the packets to make sure that we are actually following what is actually scrolling on the screen that you're showing. And I got to tell you right now, my district level administrators were thrilled at the level of engagement in the activities, and we're thrilled, and so were the principals. My hat's off. We've got some teachers on here right now. I've seen some of the things that those teachers are posting, and it's phenomenal. Not every district is getting what our kids are getting right now, and I stand by that.
But Tom, I'll fire off one question, which is, first of all, I want to echo in regards to our teachers, and particularly when I compare it to what I hear from a lot of other parents in other districts. I think it's been exceptional. There is no example of flawless execution when something like this happens, right? So no one pretends it's flawless, but I think the effort and the amount of kind of resources put on this has been exceptional. I do also understand some parents' frustration, right? Because the reality is, as great as administration and teachers have been, it is an unbelievably stressful time for a lot of parents, particularly ones that may still have to be leaving the house 5 days a week, and their kids are trying to learn at home. So we all get that. One of the questions I had, Tom, was just, do we have any data, or can we see data? You mentioned about kids connecting. Like, on average, what percentage of students are connecting on a daily basis through Chromebooks, or I don't know what visibility you have into that.
I can pass that on to Arena, but I know for a fact that we're actually logging all of that, and we we have that data. Arena, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, right now, we've been going through all the possibilities that we have for reporting, both for, for all of our things, GoGuardian, Google Classroom, Schoology. So my team right now is just kind of plowing through what's possible and what data is it really telling us, and what can we learn from it. So we are looking at that.
Yep.
Andy, I just want to piggyback. Dr. Collins and Chrissy Smith have been doing a phenomenal job in special ed. So I'm a perfect example. My wife has had good days, and she's had very challenging days with our child with special needs. I think of it like a restaurant. You can catch people and they're leaving the restaurant. A lot of people can say, oh my God, that was the best service and the best meal I've ever had. But some people would say, I didn't like it at all. So what we want is, and we've given multiple opportunities for parents to connect with teachers, principals, or district office staff and saying, what are some of the things that you specifically are struggling with that you need help on? And it's not just academic, it's social, emotional. We've had some pretty serious situations that our counselors and our school psychs acted very quickly on, and our social workers, to prevent anything bad things from happening. So it's not just academic support, it's across the board. So I know there's going to be some parents out there that are frustrated because everybody's in a different situation. There's no doubt. But I can tell you right now, when it comes to procedures and processes that are in place, we're doing a really good job.
Tom, how much feedback has there been? You know, I'm sure all the board members have heard different, and I don't mean to say gripes, complaints or issues, because the reality is, like I said, it's stressful. But one of the things I've heard a lot is just that parents, it's a level of frustration because there's so many platforms that different teachers are using. And again, I don't say that as a negative because we had to react really quickly. But if this were to go longer than the end of the year, or if there's a portion of next year that implements, is there any thought or plan to try to reduce that or streamline it? And again, realizing that not one platform offers what each class may need. So
Andy, that's $1 million question. So, and I know Arena can vouch for this. So several years ago, when we went to the one-to-one devices, there were teachers that had been using, let's say, Schoology for a really long time. They built their lessons into Schoology. There could be teachers on this right now that are on this that really were big-time fans of Schoology. But then we had people that were huge fans of Google Classroom as well. So what we didn't want to do back then was to say it's one or the other, because we try to be differentiated, and teachers this was a big issue about three years ago. But to what you're saying is, how do we support parents now? So if this were to go into next year, which it could, how are we supporting parents? A couple of ways, whether it's whatever platform they're using, but also how are we going to kind of organize it more where there's more instruction, where let's say at 9 a.m. in the morning, the teacher would be giving direct instruction. Those are all things that we have time to look at to try to figure that out. Our initial conversation, there were a lot of students that didn't want that. There were some students, high school students, that were watching their younger brothers or sisters while the parents who were essential workers were going to work. So there's still a lot we have to work through. I know we're going to have to tighten it up even more if that goes into next year. And we're going to have to provide parents with really easy to view videos, which we have, whether it's Schoology or Google Classroom, how to use it and how to support their kids.
I just have a question. Now that we know that school is officially, remote, I guess, distance learning for the rest of the year, when is the last day of school?
Well, that's a great question. So it has not been said. Some people are coming out and saying, okay, it's when the district meets its 180 days. But we have, until we get an executive order on that, I can't say right now to staff or to parents, it's going to end a week early. Until I get an executive order, I can't jeopardize the hundreds of thousands of dollars we get in state aid. So what we're hearing that the possibility is when the district meets its 180-day threshold. I'm thinking we're going to get more information on that within the next week.
So that would take into account the spring break and snow days and all that kind of stuff.
That is correct.
So waiting on the governor, basically.
Correct.
State ed, what we'll call it. And any other questions for Mr. Colabufo on this?
So assuming
Can you tell me why some of them are like?
180 days.
No.
With reading exams canceled, what does that look like for the last 2 weeks, high schoolers and last week?
No, they're using Chrome. Well, that's like Aaron said to me.
Hey, Randy, you're not muted.
Randy, yeah.
Kathy, Kathy, do you have your computer and your phone on separate?
I only have my Chromebook.
Because we're getting a lot of kickback.
Well, let me answer that though, Kathy. So that's the same question kind of that Christy just asked. When we find out from the governor, now that Regents exams have been canceled, once we find out what that 180-day, if that's what it's going to be, when we hit the threshold, then that will change when all of our schools, elementary, middle, and high school, when they're going to end. I'm hoping that we'll get that information within the week, but I'm thinking it has to come within the next 2 weeks. It has to.
So, Tom, is there any circumstance where we would have to extend teacher days or anything like that?
No.
More than likely it'll get shortened, right? Because of the spring break.
Absolutely. It definitely won't go longer. I can tell you that.
So, Tom, do you know, and again, I know all this right now is conjecture, but have you heard any rumors or is there discussion? As an example, one of my coworkers in a different state today, they already announced that they are changing the school year next year. They're starting earlier. Has there been any discussion on that?
The only thing I've seen on that is whether it's CNY Central or WSYR, and that was the first time that I heard of a possible changing. Again, it's just been rumors and speculation at this point.
Okay.
I had a parent call me today and say, Mr. Calabufo, is that true? Third graders are coming in one day, fourth graders are coming in the other day, so you can put 8 to 10 in a class. I said, listen, absolutely not. If something like that were to come out and it would be in an executive order, I would share that immediately. We don't have any of that right now.
All right. Any other questions before we move into the budget?
This is Mrs. Sunday. I just want to clarify what I actually asked. I didn't ask would the school year end earlier. What I meant to ask, or I'll rephrase what I asked. Typically, for high schoolers, those last 2 weeks, and middle schoolers, I guess the last week, they do not come to school, even though school's in session, unless they were scheduled for an exam. So are we looking at, if the school year goes, say, the 180 days, that high school teachers still have to continue to deliver content to kids that are already like past their AP exams? If
I don't have that answer for you, Kathy, because those testing days count as part of the 180 days. So I don't have the answer to that right now. None of the superintendents do.
Okay.
All right. Anything else before budget workshop? All right. I'm not sure. Maureen, Tom, whichever one of you is starting.
Go ahead, Maureen.
You want me to go through it?
Yeah.
All right. Am I good? Can you guys hear me?
Crystal.
Yep.
All righty. I put together another budget workshop. We have actually gone back kind of to the drawing board and have another budget. That is also attached tonight to the meeting, and it's on the website. Back in March, we had put out an initial budget after we had the state aid runs, we had our tax levy cap, we had thrown some other revenue at it, and it was a 83.2 million, give or take, a 3.83% increase total budget to budget. After that, everything fell apart with regards to the COVID, the school closures, and now I think we know some type of decrease in state aid, although we don't know what it is yet, and we're still waiting on that. That being said, we've gotten together and have gone through and decreased this budget. So tonight is the first time that we've looked at a new budget. This budget is 81.325 million. It's a 1.51% increase, total budget increase. This includes a state aid decrease of almost 2%, the same tax levy as before, the 3.79, which that is our property tax cap limit. We're not going over the property tax cap. It applies the same fund balance that we did last year. And we have other income increase by 51%, which is because we have that one shot health insurance secured money that's going to come in this year. This is the detail of that front page. The top set of foundation aid and all of the expense driven aids. I wanted to point out here the one thing, if you look at the line, the foundation aid line, we have a decrease of 4.2%, but the total state aid package is a decrease of 1.97%. I just wanted to point that out because when the governor or the various people discuss the possible percentage decreases in aid, it'll be interested to see if it's a decrease in foundation aid or a decrease in the whole state aid package, because this budget has a 4% decrease in foundation aid, and the other aids are all expense-driven aids and pupil-based aids. So I'm not sure if they actually would touch those formulas or it would be actually to the foundation aid number. You can go ahead, Andy. These are the corresponding expenditures to make that $81.3 million budget. It's basically a no change on the salaries. We're proposing changes and reductions in positions. So the increase on salaries on the first proposal when we had everybody in was 5.46%. So this is where we've made the bulk of the changes to this budget. The associated fringe benefits that go along with that would go up almost 5%. The BOE services are about a 2% increase, which is down a little bit from the some of the services that we are going to propose to end. The debt service is basically the same. We had one little change in amortization schedule. And then the other expenditures are only up 2%, and the fuel and utilities is down 8%, but that was already forecasted in our first budget to be down. And then the next slide is the details of every line item that is in the budget. And then if you go to the 28-page document that's also attached here, every one of these expenditure line items is broken down into the detail of the cost codes that are associated with it. And at any time, if you guys want to call me and go into these detail lines, that's totally fine. Just give me a...
So then, Maureen, if I can jump in. So the big $1 million question is, do we go out with a 0 increase to the tax levy, or do we go with the 3.79? I don't think there's a person out there, hopefully right now, that thinks that the district is doing anything but trying to make sure that we are bracing for the inevitable, which could come out tomorrow. We're hearing that the governor is going to make that first hit on the May 15th. Again, I want to be perfectly clear for people watching this. The governor now has the power to go in and change the budget 3 different times throughout the year based on the revenues coming in. Well, everybody knows right now the revenue has been non-existent for several months. That is going to be catastrophic. We are hearing anywhere from a 5% to a 15% cut to foundation aid. If that's the case, on an our foundation is $34 million. That's going to be devastating. So if we were to go out with 0, that would be an additional $1,093,000 of additional cuts. Whether it's programming, whether it's staffing, it's things like you heard, the vice president of the teachers union talk about with class sizes. All of those things will be put in there. Worst case scenario is that the governor comes in and gives us a really bad hit, and there's gonna be changes to our programming. There's no doubt about it. By going out with a 3.79, it's still under the cap. The district has gone out with higher, gone out with lower in the past. But again, the budgets were passed because I believe that the community sees that we are trying to put out the best program that we can put out. And that's not just with the electives that we have. We're one of the few districts in our county that even still have a business department with really strong electives. All of those things will have to be looked at. We have an amazing fine arts program. We have an amazing athletics program. All of these things need to be looked at. And as the superintendent, to leave $1,093,000 when it would be $72 on a $100,000 house, $144 on a $200,000 house. I'm not saying, I mean, that's money. I get it. Everybody's struggling right now. But I also think that the community would want to make sure that when those kids do come back to school, it's going to be knowing that there's going to be some changes, but it's not going to be catastrophic. And I'm hoping that the community will see that. I wish that I could go to all the venues like I've done in the past and sit down and talk to the Lioness, the Lions Club, the VFW, American Legion. They ask great questions, and in the end, they've always supported us. So I don't want anyone to feel that this is a kick in the gut, because I hate having to ask as well. But when it comes down to it, we are committed that no matter what happens, what the governor comes in and takes from us, we are going to still put out a strong Central Square program. Maureen?
So I just want to make a couple comments on that, Tom. Well, number one, on this slide for both Tom and Maureen, I guess the question is, aside from what you've mentioned, so you mentioned some positions and some other things, but what else have we extracted from the budget? So as an example, Board of Education, I see a 1.8% increase when I would expect that we should see a 50 to 80% reduction, right? Like that, I don't think anyone expects that next year we are going to participate in things the way we did this year. So when do we get, or where do we see that level of, refinement, I guess?
You mean as far as cutting it down or just looking at it?
Well, both. I guess the question is, so, and it ties into, a 3.79% tax levy increase. And again, this isn't about whether or not I support it, or frankly, it's not, I don't think, it's not a conversation around whether people would support it, whether they value education. It's that in a world where we're looking at right now 14.7, and by the time we vote on this budget, it could be very close to a 20% unemployment rate. It's justifying that increase and being able to point to things in this budget that say we've done everything we can. And right now, and again, I'm not saying we haven't, I don't have the ability to confidently say that. I don't see where we have pulled out everything we can in order to mitigate that as much as possible.
Well, I can jump in, Maureen, first. So, okay, I can tell you that, yeah, I don't see how we would be going to, New York City, school boards, all of those things. That would get cut out. But we've already gone through, we've looked at like an SBO. Okay, we would very well likely lose one SBO out of the four. But again, this is all hypotheticals, because until we get what that number is going to be on the 15th, we don't really know. We could have to go a lot more. So we had Ron Haldeman look through the fine arts program, and he's found a bunch of things already in the first phase of reductions that we made. We did the same thing with Jim Dranzak with sports. And then, and again, I wish we could have all of the wonderful things that we had in there for fine arts and for sports, but there were things that we could reduce, and we did. Looking at other positions that we wanted to bring in, we felt very strongly about bringing in more counselors at the elementary level and school psychologists at the elementary level, the whole inverted pyramid of services that we have. We did not add those positions. So that we took out from what we were planning to put in. We're looking at other professional development. I mean, I've never been the superintendent that takes a trip to San Diego or any of that stuff, nor would I ever think of those professional development trips. So I myself am looking at it, but not just me. Every department is looking at what they can do to reduce. So I feel pretty confident of the budget sessions that we've had so far at Cabinet, looking to say, okay, what can we take out right now and get to a number that we are hoping that the government doesn't come in and whack as hard as he could. May 15th is what we're hearing. And we made a number of reductions that we sent all the board members on a spreadsheet, a PDF that shows the things that we have reduced. And we reduced a lot. We took a lot out of there, which I think is apparent with the salary reduction. Not salaries, but overall salary of different jobs that we didn't put in place because of this.
Why don't we move forward and we can review it? It's
Good.
there. Okay. So how how we reduce this budget by the 1.3 million is exactly what Tom was just talking about. So we can review these. At the high school, we are not going to replace a math position. We're reducing a special ed position, reducing a psychologist that's shared between the middle school and the high school. We're going to reduce an ELA, and we have a typist position that's open that we're not going to fill. We have an art position that there's a retirement we're not going to fill, and we're going to reduce the tech support 10-month TA position. It's at the library, I believe. At the middle school, another special ed position and a music position that we won't replace the retirement. At the elementary level, one of the SPOs. And then there's also 4 elementary positions that can be eliminated due to declining enrollment, and also no job loss because we have retirements. At the district office level, we have a special ed typist position that we created and never filled. We're going to eliminate that. We're not going to go with psych interns for next year. In technology, we're taking away the SysOp stipends, the typist position, and the land tech.
Maureen, there's one other position that we didn't show on there, but I think every board member knows what happened, and that was Jen DiBianco's position, which was Director of Student Supports Interventions. That was an administrative position we did not replace with administrator. We replaced it with a certified social worker.
Yeah, and that's reflected in the budget documents. It just happened during the year.
Correct.
These are the other, the programs, the softwares, the various items that we are looking to eliminate. The Forecast 5 lab, the STAR program at levels 2 through 4, Navigate Prepared. We have an equipment repair COSER that we're going to go down a day. We have the public relations COSER that we're going to lower down to a lower level plan. And we have a data person that we're going to reduce the days of service down to 40. In the athletic department, we are looking at boys soccer, girls soccer, and lacrosse in the modified sports, and JV golf and the girls cheerleading, basketball and football in the JV level. Those two, I believe Jim said, with attrition, they didn't have as much participation. And at the music level, we're looking at the middle school parade band, the high school parade band, and the summer programming.
And I just want to kind of echo that, Maureen. So I don't want anyone to be confused and think we're cutting all modified sports. We're not. That's why the number 1 was before each of those. Correct. We had several of them.
Yep. So that's where we're getting the savings from. They're not savings, the reductions.
Maureen, before you go on, previous slide, the 1 SPO, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
We currently have 4 SPOs. They are contracted through the Village of Central Square. There's 1 at the middle school, 1 at the high school, and 2 at the elementaries. So this would be 1 of the 2 at the elementaries. So they'd be sharing differently.
So they'd go back to one of them just covering all of them?
Yeah, well, we would have to figure it out,
Right.
but that's $50,000 that we would have to say yes.
But
So
didn't we just put a lot of effort into getting to this point?
we did, and then then COVID happened. There's a lot of things, and a lot of board members may say we went to the effort in a lot of other areas as well, academically as well. So these very difficult decisions.
I pulled the next 2 slides out of the property tax cap calculation presentation that's on our website, because I know this is the discussion. I wanted to go over it again. You have to remember that when we levy taxes, it's a 3-part formula. There's the assessments, the equalization rate, and the levy. When we are talking about that at this point in the game, we only have control over the levy. We don't have the town assessments, and we don't have the equalization rates. Those items don't come out. Assessments come through at the end of May. Equalization rates come through in August. So when we do this estimate, the $72 per $100,000 home is simply that, it's an estimate. And it's probably the highest estimate that you're going to get, because we're assuming that there's no change in assessments and that there are no changes in the equalization rates. So that being said, on the next slide, I kind of wanted to show you what happens per what we predict in the early spring. If you were to go back and look at these presentations right here, the estimated tax rates in those years were to go up to $19.33, up to $19.14, up to $19.20. But when you go over to the actual levies and what happens afterwards, you can see that the tax rates in last year, the year we're sitting in right now, the $18.95 per thousand, is no different than it was 4 years ago. That's how that property tax cap legislation works. It's trying to factor in the changes in the assessments and the equalization rates to keep schools, villages, towns from assessing on top of increased assessments and equalization rates. They're trying to hold the rates level. And it really is working if you look at the actuals in the end. That's what the formula does. So I just wanted to put it out there that the estimate is $72 per thousand, but the actual in the end probably will be pretty close to what it is because that formula does seem to work. And I think that's the proof. That $18.95 per thousand has basically remained the same for 4 years.
Maureen, which town are you basing that on? Do you base that on a specific town?
This is set. We have 11 townships in our.
Yeah. And they're all different. They're all different rates.
And if you're assessed at 100%, then this is your rate. If you're not assessed at 100%, the equalization rate adjusts the rate to make it, quote, equal to this actual rate at 100%.
Okay.
Okay, I also want to discuss fund balance because I think this is important. And this is a very simplified concept of it. It would not be this easy, but I think I just want us to have a grasp of what is our fund balance. So I put together, we've closed this year, so you haven't seen the end of the June of 19 year, because when we talked about it in August, we hadn't closed yet, so we didn't have these numbers. We are, give or take, our fund balance is about 12.5 million. The restricted funds are just over 4 million. The assigned, the unassigned, the non-spendable, and the committed are all in there that comes to the 12.5 million. We have been using the last couple of years a projected use of fund balance at 1.5 million into the out years. So I just wanted, this is very simplified, but at 12.5 million, if we use 1.5 million every year and we use it, which up until now we haven't really been using it, it's a budget tactic to give us breathing room in the budget. But if we were to truly use that, it would last about 8 years. If we were to go up to 2 million a year, it would last about 6 years. If we were to use 3 million a year, it would last about 4 years. Just to kind of put your mind around our total fund balance. And that's totally simplified because obviously there's rules inside of all of these categories, but just to have a broad understanding of that money.
And Maureen, that's public information, a school district's fund balance, correct?
Oh yeah.
So in our county, we have districts a fraction of our size that are sitting with 17, 18, and $19 million that are a fraction of our size. And my worry right now is, now that we've seen COVID, and they talk about possible second waves, third waves, my worst scenario is that the governor shuts businesses down again, and which are a direct, that funds school districts. And when that happens, that number right there, you're going to see continue to shrink and shrink and shrink. To go out with zero really scares me because we would be leaving $1,093,000 that compounds every single year that would counter that. Just wanted to throw that in, Maureen.
So the discussion points on this, any other questions on the fund balance, guys? So these are the four big moving parts if you think about the budget in total. The state aid decrease that we have in this budget right now that we're kind of preparing for what's to come is 1.3 million. It can be interpreted as a 4% decrease on foundation aid or a 2% decrease on state aid. Based on what the state does with regards to these mid-year reductions, that's kind of what we have ourselves set up for right now, depending on what happens on Friday. It includes a property tax increase of $1 million. It includes the use of the reserves applied fund balance of $1.5 million, and that expenditure decrease of $1.3 million. So these are the parts. If we come in there and we don't do the property tax increase of the $1 million, we need to either take it from reserves, we have to add it to decreased expenditures, or the state aid piece would need to go up. So these are the 4 little pieces of the pie that keep moving around the circle. And the same with right now, if the state comes in and it's an 8% foundation aid decrease, and we need another 0.3 million, our discussion is going to be back to, are we looking at taking some of that from reserves? Are we going to decrease expenditures further? The same with the discussion of the property taxes. If we don't levy the tax, we need to either increase reserves, decrease expenditures. So those are basically the moving pieces that we've got to reconcile. So I think our talking points as we sit here now is that we still don't know the extent of the state aid cuts. That's kind of what we're bracing for with that 1.3 million expenditure decrease. I also want to say that when the voters approve and the board adopts a budget, that's the maximum amount of expenditure that's authorized for us to spend. That does not mean that we must spend it. Because I think potentially what could happen here this year, there's 3 different windows of opportunity for them to cut our state aid. The first one is happening right now, but there's 2 other times. So if we move forward in the next month, we're going to know whether we have an approved adopted budget, and there's going to be a number there. If a month after that, we get another big cut in our state aid, we will have to, again, make some cuts or some changes before we go into September, because what we want to avoid are mid-year cuts. That would be the worst place to find ourselves in. So I don't want anybody to think that just because we adopt the budget at an 81 million, that means that we will have to spend that. All it is saying that we can't spend any more than that.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Since school is closed and we're doing a lot of the construction ahead of time, is that going to affect the budget at all?
It shouldn't affect the budget. We have our
Well, I'm just thinking, it'll be done faster. Does that make it so that we're going to get building aid quicker?
No, we've actually been pushing on the building aid. So the phase 1 projects are actually still not totally complete. I got a couple of extensions on the high school, and I want to say maybe it's Millard Hawk. So right now, hopefully those will be complete in time for us to submit those and be finalized. The phase 2 projects, which are everything else that's going on right now, will need to be finalized in December for the aid to flow the next year. And honestly, we're doing really well with this because of...
Well, that's the one plus about kids not being in school, that we can get a lot of the construction done ahead of time. I was just wondering if that was going to affect on the aid benefit at all, with them being done quicker.
Well, Randy, I'm glad you bring this up, because what I definitely want the community to know is that we've been very financially responsible when it comes to the capital project. Had we have went with what was originally on the table, and kids were going to stay in Millard Hawk, and there would be like 3 shifts, they'd have to clean it all up, then kids would come in the morning. That was in the millions of dollars more if that would have been put out to bid. But by me going down and being like the pseudo principal at CSI and having Pearl down there with a minuscule stipend, I'll say it was a $10,000 stipend as opposed to a full-on secretary that would have been 75 or 80 salary and benefit. That allowed us to save a ton of money and get so much of the capital project done already.
Well, and me living here right next to the schools, I see it constantly construction still going on. I was just wondering if it was helping the district versus, at least there was one positive that come out of this garbage.
It's definitely a positive. It won't help drive the state aid any faster, the building aid that corresponds with
It'll just
the
be
expenditure.
done faster.
It just might be done a little bit faster. And if it's done more efficiently and we have a little bit more in there, because we can't spend any more than the approved voter price, and we can do a few more things, which actually you guys just approved, though, that I think it was last month or the month before, because now we're doing the gym floor at the high school.
Yeah.
And we are doing, I can't remember, something with the windows at Millard Hawk.
Yeah, the windows.
So
Yep.
Yeah,
it's
so
giving
that
us
it is definitely helping.
So it's giving us the opportunity to get some of those alternates that were listed in the original bid.
Yep, correct. All right, and now I did actually update this timeline. This has been crazy. Pearl and I are kind of a little bit numb with this whole new budget process, but this is the revised timeline. We have to adopt by May 21st, which is why we have the May 20th board meeting scheduled for budget adoption, because we have to transmit the property tax report card basically the next day. And the public hearing needs to happen between the 26th and the 4th. I'm looking at the right one. We've got it scheduled, I believe, for the 26th. And then the absentee ballot process will start. And on June 9th at 5 o'clock and after, we can open the absentee ballots that are in our possession. And that will be our vote. That's a very simplistic view of that timeline. We're scrambling on how to do all of this.
Hey, Mark,
Maureen, may I ask a question? This is Tim.
Yeah, Tim.
So on Friday, we're hoping, the presumption is that the governor's going to put out some numbers for aid, correct?
Yes.
And we've used an assumption number that we're expecting you get on Friday. I think that's Friday.
Correct.
So if he comes back with anything lower than what we're assuming, we have to assume all these cuts that we've made plus more based on what that number is by the lowered amount, correct?
Correct.
And we have to do that literally from Friday until the meeting on the 20th, the Wednesday, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to be clear. So anything below the assumed number in this current budget that you guys presented tonight, if there's any dollar amount below that, we have to make those adjustments before next Wednesday.
Yep.
Correct. And I would refer the board to the spreadsheet so you can see what our thoughts were with phase 1. And then if that scenario happens, Tim, you'll be able to see all the things that we've laid out there to have to address that.
Yep. I just wanted to clarify the timing. Thank you.
You got it.
And we can always put some more fund balance towards it if we want to do a compromise between our next possible changes and fund balance.
Understand.
And Tom, just so I'm clear from our previous discussions, I feel like you and Maureen are fairly confident that at least this first bite at the apple that he's reserved himself, I guess, into our aid is going to occur, and it's going to be significant to the extent that it's not going to be thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, but millions
of dollars. Absolutely.
And the proposed tax levy would, comparing it to a 0% raise, the proposed one raises it, you said, $1,093,000?
Correct.
Okay. So that might not even form the ice cream scoop on the first scoop.
On Friday, we may have to find another $5 million. It was very hard to find $3 million and then, $2.5 million and then tap into fund balance to get to the $4 million. If that's the case, you're going to see districts really have to start prioritizing. We're going to have to look at things that were really nice, like when we provided the one way of, both ways of UPK. That's $140,000. We have to look at all the things that we have on. We have that on the spreadsheet to be able to then hit that next wave. There are going to be districts that tap the reserves and go under to the level of the next couple of years. Yep.
But what I'm saying is, if we were to go forward with a 0% increase, then we're really just adding another $1,093,000 to the amount of cuts we'd have to make. Because
that is correct.
you guys are all but 100% confident that we are not going to get, by the end of this coming school year, we will not have received the same amount of aid we received last year, period. Not even close. Not even close.
So the governor has said it could be a 20% cut to school budget, to education budget. We were told it could definitely see a 10% hit to foundation aid. That is in the millions. It's to be 10% less than the 34 million right now. Yeah, that could be devastating. It will definitely be. Everybody, school boards have said it, teachers unions have said it, superintendent groups have said it. It will be substantial.
Well, and as I said last meeting, brace ourselves because New York City's not opening till at least June 1st. I mean, think of those dollars.
Right.
You know, upstate New York, some areas might open, 3 of the 7, regions might open, but you take New York City out of the mix, and it's going to be big dollars.
But that's where Tim, I'm glad you're saying it, because when I do food distribution, I have conversations with the same parents that now have gotten to know me just on those Mondays for the 6-7 hours. And they're like, no, it's going to be fine, Ms. Calbufo. My wife was furloughed. She's back to work. I'm back. Like, I need them to know, even though our economy may open back up, a lot of it upstate in our local areas on May 16, what this is going to do just on the revenue across the state that has gone away, what that's going to do to education. I need people to watch this. I need people to, hear this, call me up if they have questions, and turn on the news, because it's going to be devastating moving forward.
Absolutely.
I sincerely hope I'm wrong. I would be shocked if Friday the governor's numbers aren't triple the impact currently projected in the draft budget. And that's not a knock on that. I don't mean that to come out negative. I just think that's the reality of it. But also this is absolutely a textbook and should be studied of why those that weren't in favor of the property tax cap weren't in favor of it, because this is the entire talk track has been forced around the fact that regardless of the increase, we have to pass it along because we don't know what we can do next year. So we've really relinquished all ability to have a part in the budget process. And when I say relinquish, it's been forced on us. We pass along what's there. Magically, it's 3.79%. And again, this isn't directed at Tom or administration. I don't mean they magically did it. It's the cards were dealt. But the only other thing I'll say is it is terrifying because, I'm going to assume that let's assume we go out with a 3.79% tax levy increase. State aid is going to be cut because their revenues are down. Their revenues are our taxes. Our taxes go down because of high unemployment and lack of disposable income and everything else. So it is a double impact to everyone that is paying on this budget. And again, that it simply speaks to there's no good way out of this. Maureen, my one, final question or thing that I would hope we can go over tonight is, what are the actual impacts and just rough numbers? Let's just assume for a second, if the budget were to not be approved, what is the impact numbers and restrictions that are placed on us as a district?
If the budget were not to be approved, we cannot increase the tax levy. So that's where we would lose the levy we're going out with. It has to stay, it's a 0 increase. So the $1,093,000 would have to be eliminated. So we'd have to cut the budget down that much. And then there's restrictions on I haven't done it in the past and it's lighter than it is now, but there's restrictions on some expenditures, some field trips, materials and supplies, equipment cannot be purchased. And there's some percentage ratios that need to work. If you have decreases or increases in the instructional side, you have to have similar increases or decreases on the admin and it's that three-part budget that we do during the public hearing. Those three categories have to be similar in their percentage changes, which is sometimes harder. But otherwise, everything, I was just looking at the updated laws this week. You can still have some sports. You can still have some music. It's not like you can't have that programming that
You
in
can,
the past.
you can fund music and extracurricular through a contingency budget.
You can still have transportation. You can still transport some athletic and music programming. That used to be gone too, and that's not the case. You can't do extra, but you can have basics.
And I would, I would just, let me jump in. And so I would say, if there's anybody in the community that's thinking, well, okay, so there are some stipulations that would go away if the budget failed, we went to a contingency. I would counter that to say there's $1,093,000 worth of other things that would go away as well if it didn't pass. So it's a catch-22 on both sides. Again, I want anybody watching this to know this 3.79 is not a kick. It's not meant to be a kick in anybody's gut. It's looking back at 2008 when that was horrible time in the economy. Central Square went out with a 7.97 and passed. So I don't want people to think that this is a kick in the gut. It's the last thing we want to do is hurt our people. I think we've showed that through food distribution on Mondays and Tuesdays and whatever we can do for people. But unfortunately, if you leave that kind of money on the table, then when we're trying to build programs and sustain these programs, not just for next year, because next year's the year after is going to be even worse financially, is what we're hearing. We want to be able to still have really strong programs, people who take pride in their community. I don't want people to leave. I don't want people to go, well, you know what? We're going to go over to Cicero's putting out whatever they're putting out. Most of the districts are putting out an increase. The last thing I want to do is lose teachers and lose families. We take a lot of pride, and the board should take pride in this because a lot of it you've done in over the time and in 4 years, improving whether it's sports. We've added a lot of sports and music and band. It's phenomenal stuff. And I just want people to feel comfortable in the community that we're still going to move forward, even though we're getting whacked by the governor. We're going to still move forward.
Yes, I think what you're going to find is, like I talked about the last board meeting, is that the school budget is going to be held hostage. This week's very important. Andy Pelosi.
Can't hear you, Steve.
You lost you, Steve.
Not hear me at all?
You're muted now, Steve.
Well, it's supposed to be talking if you can hear me, but can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
So, like I said, the next stimulus package just going through is going to be written by the House, and the governor mentioned it today. So I think if that's not going well, I think you're going to see a big cut on Friday on the 15th, unless there's a rescues coming. I think the teachers and school budgets are going to be held hostage to prove the point in New York State. So stand by.
So other questions or comments on the budget? So Tom, what is the plan as far as, or just walk us through? Normally, if we were doing an in-person vote, there would be the hearing and maybe some community forums. What are the plans for the virtual world?
It's a great question. So I'm talking with the other superintendents, seeing what they're doing. But what I would like to do is have, kind of like those community forum Zooms and put it out there and answer questions. Have a little bit of like what we just did right here, not into that great detail. I don't want to bore people, but I want to give them a foundation, and then I want to be able to answer their questions. I'll be on there. Maureen will be on there. And I want people to feel comfortable. That's the one thing that I called it the road show, going all around the district. Unfortunately, I can't do that and answer their questions. I'm just wondering, will those same groups want to come on? Normally when I do, superintendent feedback things, I get a very small amount of people. I will tell you this, the feedback, anecdotally, I'm hearing from people that I don't start the conversations, and it's at Cole and a little bit at CSI today. What parents were saying, hey, we're gonna support this budget. Again, I can't say anything because I can't cross that line, but they're saying, we're gonna support it. A lot of us got, stimulus money and set a little bit aside because this is an investment for our kids. So those are the kind of conversations, though. I want to go through in a fine-tooth comb. A couple things board members have already looked on here. Professional development. Okay, that had looked like it's gone up. That's taken a tremendous loss. So we need to clean that part up. Andy, what you mentioned on the board for board budget, that obviously that's going to take a significant loss. We're not going to be going to New York City or doing other things like that when we're talking about reducing programs. So all of those things, I'm going to be meeting with cabinet to say, okay, let's look at this even more.
Just, and I keep looking to my right, not because I'm ignoring you guys. I have two screens going here, but Maureen, I meant to ask, and I'm looking at the other file, but the 12.14% increase in transportation, it's about $683,000. Is that impact of the new buses, or what is that? If you know, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, sorry.
Let me just find it, Andy.
Yep.
Andy, since she's looking for that, that's another scary part because they're saying trans aid can get whacked as well. Right now we're hovering around 87%. If all of those things get hit, plus the foundation aid gets hit, it's scary.
Where are you seeing that, Andy?
So it's in the budget workshop presentation.
The one that's right in front of you? Go up to it. Go up.
I don't know if that's I'll tell you in a second.
Okay.
Under operating revenue, Maureen.
Yeah,
says-
transportation.
I thought you were talking about expenditures.
No, I'm sorry. I meant the revenue on that if I said expenditures.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the number that's coming through on our projected transportation aid, which is based off of the expenditures of the year before, which is the budget that we're in now. So all of these are estimates. So it's estimated on a larger spend.
Yep.
Just something to think about. And these are always in the ballpark, but they're never exactly what the projections are. If you got to think about it. These projections are coming in January and then April of this year based on this year's expenditures, which don't wrap up until next year.
Right.
So they're totally estimates.
And just rough numbers. I mean, so as an example, by the time this school year is over, we're really looking at close to 3 months of buses not running. So the year down the road that will impact, we're going to get whammied again, right?
Yeah, but we're still paying all of the expenditures there except for the fuel for the most part. So yes, it will be less.
Right.
But any decent, I guess I would say savings or that come out of this as far as some items that we're not spending over these next 3 months, remember, will go into our fund balance. So it'll be there for us to utilize.
Okay. Other questions?
Andy, can you go down to expenditures? Nope. Yep, you can just leave it there. I don't have a specific question at the moment. I just wanted to see it.
Tom, do you see what I talked about there?
Yep.
And I'm guessing similarly, the student transportation increase there is because what's being added?
It's basically salary increases. That's
Okay.
usually what makes any of these items go up. If you were to go to the detailed one that is attached, and you can do that later when you get out of here, you'll see that it's the bulk of that is going to be wages, expenditures.
And Maureen, something that Mr. Lawyer had found on here, and I need to look at this closer, is 2070, the staff development. And it shows 44.47. Can you touch upon that?
Yep, let me just go back and find it. Yeah, the bulk of that is BOE services. We did some big increases this year. Oh, it was Reading League and
Oh, right.
Yeah.
The whole literacy initiative at the elementary level. Gotcha.
Yeah. And honestly, it's in next year's number, so you can see the increase, but it's happening this year. We just didn't know about that last year, or this year's number should have been bigger.
Gotcha. It's making up 2 years in one.
Yep, exactly.
Gotcha. Because they came out with the whole Reading League initiative. We didn't know about it. It didn't exist when we planned the year before that. So we had to make up for 2 years in one. I see.
Yeah, so it's just showing the increase more drastically because we didn't work our way into it.
Gotcha.
You're saying there's no wiggle room there?
Well, there is. There is, because we look at how many coaches that we have, and that's something that Aaron leads, and reducing coaches even more. But again, that's slippery slope because those coaches are really utilized by the staff. So anything we do is going to have an impact. So we're going to look at what are the things that we can do staff development wise that won't have a significant impact on instruction like what the Reading League is doing. So to answer your question, Michael, within that 44%, what are those things that we can then pull back and say, we just don't have the funds to send teachers, let's say, to do specific things that entire buildings have gone before to BOCES to get training on project-based learning and things like that. Those are things that we can do. We've already made that investment with the literacy initiative, and it has already, if you talk to the elementary teachers, has shown considerable strength and growth with our students. But there are things in there, though, Michael, that we can reduce, and we will.
All right. I mean, fair enough. I mean, we're gonna have to squeeze everywhere. Just from a perception standpoint, that's a big percentage increase.
Yep.
And if it's justifiable, it's justifiable. But we've also got to balance that against some of these other things that we're looking at cutting.
Sure.
Yeah, and Tom, this is just one of those. This is one of those comments, not necessarily meant for action discussion, but I was speaking with I think another board member and just commenting that one of the interesting things that we're going to have to face down the road is getting all the stakeholder groups to not everyone gets a choice, obviously, but knowing wishes, desires, and order of the way things are done sometimes helps. And the example I'll use is simply that, so many of our decisions are going to be out of our control. We're going to have to react. It's not a question if we do, it's just how. And so as an example, Syracuse University, when you have the sports people that came out and took their, as an example, 10% pay cut to avoid headcount cuts, just one of the conversations and discussions that will be interesting down the road is amongst all our different stakeholder groups is, do they have preferences in those areas? because when we face these difficult decisions, we've got to go on guiding principles and where it fits, following, preference and desires of our stakeholder groups. But so again, it's not, I know you can't necessarily say anything here, just going to be interesting in short order, seeing where that goes.
I think before we start doing that, we're going to have to look at being very strict about field trips, and that means across the district, whether it be sports and classrooms, and we've got to be state across the district, because if one school finds out that another school is doing a field trip, it's not fair. So that needs to be looked at. I've lived through the taxpayers group, and I've lived through where there were no tax. They cut programs, cut down to the bare bones. And then when we came back out of this, after creating the Citizens for Quality Education and getting all the union people involved, all the teachers, and we brought the district back. And this, we cannot take this down to the bare bones and make teachers responsible for giving up any pay or anything in regards to this. I think we just need to discuss it and look at the minor things that we can do. And then if we have to raise taxes, so be it. But I am not in favor of doing any of that.
Other comments?
So Andy, why don't we have, if any other board members have any comments, email them to me. And then if it's like, I will include Maureen or whoever, on the responses, and I will send it to the whole board. So, because I think it was Tim McCarthy had made the point, we're in like speed zone now, and things are going to start unrolling very quickly, especially if the governor actually does come out on the 15th and make that announcement. So if any board member has any questions at all, you want to email me, I will get you that response. I will get it to the whole board, so we can answer you in immediate, real time.
All right.
Tom, in closing, this is Tim again. I would just say I don't envy you and the entire team here. The work you've already put in, and I know is going to continue. So I just don't envy your position, and however we can support it, let's try and get it done. But tough times, and whatever you need, holler. So
thanks, Tim.
All right, we're going to move into the reports section. Tom, any update or actions or anything on the census?
Nothing. I've continued to put more things out there. Had a couple parents call me. They just wanted to know a little bit more about that Title 13. I explained to them that under Title 13, that can't be used or shared with anybody at all, and they felt more comfortable with that. Not really a lot more than that. I do want to I want to say this. Kristen Enright and her team have been working diligently to be able to provide, it's not going to be the same with those mass gatherings and whatnot, but the ideas that they'd come up with were pretty remarkable on something that they can have for the students. Now, does that mean that the plans are done? No. They're meeting again. I think, Andy, you sent, actually 3 of the board members sent me the whole Oswego Speedway. Is that an option? And again, if things can be done where safely and we get buy-in that we're able to do something like that, Kristen Enright is looking at all of those possibilities. I will tell you this. It's very frustrating when you have some parents that call up and they're angry and they say, let's just have a traditional setting. You tell SUNY Oswego we're heading up there. And I get it. And I don't take it personal because, Andy, you alluded to it earlier. Everybody's struggling right now. People are doing their jobs, and then they're coming home, and then they're teaching their kids distance learning wise, and everybody's frustrated. Oswego, that's off the table. Having mass venues in the traditional way, that's not because Central Square doesn't want to do it, and we want to do it. We want to do wonderful things for our kids, but I just want anyone watching this right now to know we are doing everything we can for those milestone events. And Kristen Enright, I was eavesdropping at CSI She was talking with her principals, and there are some phenomenal ideas. Parents are contacting her. She's sharing it with her team and her senior advisors, and I feel really comfortable with what they're doing right now.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Mrs. Fishman, anything to bring up?
Yes, actually, I just wanted to let the board know, I'm not sure if everyone knew, I was informed that Wayne Gopelt, voluntarily made all of the senior athletes 3 personalized stickers, vinyl stickers, just out of the goodness of his own heart and to try to brighten their day. So I wanted to give, him and his business a shout out. And I think that was it for now. And that's not to say that no one else is doing anything, because I know there's been, there's some Facebook pages that are sponsors senior trying to, kind of cheer up the seniors that are kind of getting a short stick here. But it's not just the seniors; it's pretty much every student in the district. They're missing their friends and everything else, but the seniors particularly, senior athletes, senior students all together. And so there's been a lot of, community outreach, both by individuals and businesses, but that was just one specific one that a community member, raised to me. And so I thought I would bring it up to let everybody know, and then to say thank you to Wayne for that.
One quick thing too, Michael Lawyer triggered it in my mind earlier today. Jim Dranzak had already sent information about the points, athletic points, and the shadow boxes, and the t-shirt for all the seniors, athletic t-shirt. All of that's going to be going to all parents tomorrow in a blast. So I wanted to make sure that I touched upon that now as well. Also, Kristen Enright has been talking with students and leadership about the milestone events as well. I forgot to say students have been involved, and they have been.
All right. Just want to remind the board, I think it was due today to Pearl, so I'm sure you could sneak in, but this Thursday at 6 p.m. is the virtual Pathways to Careers that City has arranged for everyone to attend. It's really beneficial, lots of good information for those that were able to attend or view the recap of last year's event. It's really good and timely stuff. So if you're interested, we'll know. That's all I had, so I'll open it up to the board. Any topics or questions to bring up?
This is Tim again. I would just say, obviously, with the graduation stuff, we're not going to have a traditional graduation. Tom, again, you and the team, whatever you can do, by some will be well received and by others will not be, but so wasn't graduation. So my other point, I thought the athletic t-shirt sends out a really positive message in saying we made history or something to that effect. Like, people will wear that in a year, and it will actually be pretty cool, as weird as that sounds. So
well, and just to piggyback on that, Tim, I'm not sure how many of the board members or people watching saw Damon Villeneuve's video that was posted on Facebook that had very positive feedback. But in that, he essentially said the same thing, Tim, was that the class of 2020 will be remembered. I mean, it will go down in history. And sometimes it's not a fun thing to be, part of history. Yep. But, anybody that says that, well, what class year did you graduate? And they say 2020, and more than likely, those people, many people will say, oh, you were that class during COVID, and so I thought that was great. And I know that a lot of the community members appreciated Damon's, sentiment in that little video that he posted.
Very good.
Yep. Anything else from the board?
And you guys got a birthday coming up you'd like a drive-by? Because we're doing that too.
No,
I graduated from college.
I'll come by your house tomorrow.
Let's turn it over to Ms. Colbufo for the superintendent's report.
Again, I pretty much already said it. I just wanted to touch upon the fact that the sports points and the shadow boxes, that's going to be out there to parents. the only message I want to say left with the superintendent report is if there are any parents out there that are struggling with anything, any part of distance learning, anything with the packet drop off, I helped a mother today. Please, I know maybe your first inclination is go to Facebook, call your kid's teacher or call the principal or call anybody in the district office, and we are there to help you. I think it's so important, not only academically, but socially and emotionally. I've talked to a mother Friday whose kid has an A average, never had an issue before, but is starting to see some things. And I got to tell you, I've said this before, and this is not to the extent of the conversation on Friday, but Oswego County does lead the state in suicide. And so it is so important because it's important to see what the signs are. And if you think that your child seems a little bit disconnected, just err on the side of reaching out to the teacher, who will then get the counselor support staff. Our SPOs are amazing. We do wellness checks. We always bring food when we do. I would rather err on that side because these students are going through something, right? We talk about seniors, but when I do, and it almost brings me tears to say right now, but I have these little kids that come with their parents to get food at the elementary buildings, and the kids are crying. And they've got signs up that says, thank you for the food, thank you for what you're doing, we miss you. This is devastating, especially for those kids who are single. They don't have any siblings. And so they're really struggling right now. So if there's any parent that's out there, any board member that says, hey, they're struggling, I'll do 10 of those visits tomorrow to put a smile on the kids' faces, as will any of the administrators that are on this thread right now, because I'm not the only one that's been going to houses. These faces have all been doing that as well, and teachers and whatnot. So if you know of anybody struggling, I would rather say that and get on top of it now than, God forbid, have to go to something later, a tragedy. So if you hear of anything, I don't care if it's midnight, you board members have never had a problem with calling me that late to say, hey, there's an emergency. Please don't stop doing that. That's all, Andy.
Thanks, Tom. All right, we'll move on to our final item H. I'll make a motion for item H1, the approval of the first reading on proposed district's policies. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Loy was the first one I heard. Any discussion on these? And as a reminder, this is the first reading at our next meeting, assuming that it passes. That will be the second reading, and then they'll become adopted policy. So any questions or comments? All right, being none, Mrs. Fishman.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mrs. Wood.
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson.
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit. I think that was a yes. I'm going to go with a yes. Mr. Loy.
Yes.
Mr. Patch.
Yes.
Mr. Hoyt.
Yes.
And Mr. Martin is a yes. I'll make a motion for item H2, approve the sponsorship of continuing education agreement. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Loy. Any discussion? Mrs. Fishman.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mrs. Wood.
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson.
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit.
Yes.
Mr. Loy.
Yes.
Mr. Patch.
Yes.
Mr. Hoyt.
Yeah.
Mr. Martin's a yes. After this meeting, we're going to have to show Mrs. Sundit the replay so she knows why we're laughing. I'll make a motion for item H3, approval of the resolution for high-speed communication services. Can I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Loy, any discussion on H3? And Mrs. Fishman.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mrs. Wood.
Yep.
Mrs. Nickerson.
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit.
Yes.
Mr. Loy.
Yes.
Mr. Patch.
Yes.
Mr. Hoyt.
Yep.
And Mr. Martin is a yes. So that is unanimous. And with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Loy. Any discussion? Reminder, next, our discussion is that Wednesday meeting next week, and then Wednesday the 27th meeting. So two odd days coming up. So, Mrs. Fishman.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mrs. Wood.
Yes.
I think she thought we adjourned.
All right, Mrs. Nickerson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit,
Yeah.
Mr. Loye,
Yes.
Mr. Patch,
Yes.
Mr. Hoyt,
Yep.
Mr. Martin, yes. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Cabinet. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, board. Have a good night, and talk to you all next Wednesday, if not.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
You're all-
Bye from